What does your bank account actually say about you right now? Not the number you round up when someone asks, not the balance you're about to fix. The real number. The one you haven't looked at directly in 3 weeks because looking at it means accepting what it says about how you've been living. Tony looked at his on a Tuesday morning when he was 32. It said $214. He sat with that number for a long time. Then he made one decision, not a dramatic one, not a big one, a quiet one. What happened over the next 8 years is the part nobody talks about when they tell you to start investing early, ABLUI. Tony built that spreadsheet 6 months earlier, a Saturday afternoon that started as productivity and ended as panic. He made it through 4 rows before he closed the laptop and told himself he'd come back when he felt more ready. He was not going to get more ready. So on a Tuesday night, 3 a.m., the radiator banging the way it always did in February, he opened it again. His income, $68,400 a year. That sounds fine until you map it out. $5,700 a month before taxes becomes $3,940 after. Rent, $150. Car payment, $380. Student loan minimum, $210. $280. Groceries, $340. Subscriptions he forgot he had $94. That left $1,079, but his credit card statement said he'd been spending $1,340 in the column labeled everything else. Not a crisis number, a slow leak number, the kind that doesn't alarm you until it's been going for 2 years and you're $261 further behind every single month. He closed the laptop. He sat in the dark, and something shifted. Not dramatically, not like a movie, quietly. The way a door creaks open in a house that's been shut up too long. Here's what nobody says when you start this in your 30s. You are not behind, you are not doomed. But you are not getting a clean run at this either. Your 20s are gone. The compounding years that every finance book uses in its examples, where you invest $5,000 at 22 and retire wealthy. Those years are behind you. And the math on that is real and worth grieving for exactly one night. One night. Because here's what else is true. You are not 22, you are not investing with a part-time income, and zero concept of how money actually behaves. You have a job, you have professional skill, you are capable of earning more than you did 5 years ago. And you are old enough now to stop lying to yourself about what the numbers say. The 22-year-old version of you had time. The 32-year-old version of you has something better, the ability to actually follow through. At 32, if you invest $600 a month and average a 9% annual return in a diversified index fund, you will have $1.1 million by 62. That's arithmetic, not optimism, not a sales pitch. Just math running quietly in the background of every decision you make from this point forward. But $600 a month requires something most people skip entirely. The brutal, unsexy work of turning $214 into an emergency fund, eliminating that $261 monthly deficit, and really deciding, that where you are in 5 years matters more than where you eat next Friday. The first milestone isn't $10,000, it's not $5,000. It's the first real $1, sim in a savings account you do not touch. This is harder than it sounds, because $1,000 in your 30s is also a car repair. It's a medical bill. It's a flight home for something nobody planned. Life at 32 has more surface area than it did at 22. More things can go wrong. More people might depend on you. So building that first 1,000 feels like pouring water into a cracked glass. Tony sold a jacket he bought to feel successful at 28. It went for $85 on an app. He cancelled 3 subscriptions, $94 back. He ate lunch from home for 6 weeks, maybe $180 saved. He picked up 2 extra Saturday shifts doing something he was slightly overqualified for. He didn't tell anyone. Not because he was ashamed of the work, but because explaining it meant explaining everything else. The spreadsheet, the $214, the 2 years of going backward. And Tony wasn't ready to hand that story to anyone yet. That was $320. One morning he checked his account, $1,043. He sat with that for a second. No celebration, no announcement. Who would he even tell who would understand why this particular number mattered? But he felt it, something small and solid in his chest that wasn't there before. Proof that he could change the direction of something. He closed the app, he made coffee, he went to work. At 33, he automated $400 a month into a Roth IRA and another $200 into a high-yield savings account. It left his checking account on the 2nd of every month before he had time to rationalize keeping it. He lived on the rest. It was tight, but it worked. And then his car made a sound. He knew immediately, the grinding low groan that started somewhere under the floor on a Wednesday morning in February when it was 19 degrees outside. He pulled into a gas station parking lot and called the mechanic. The repair bill was $2,300. He sat in the cold passenger seat while his car was being towed. He ran the number 3 times, not because he didn't trust the math, because he needed to feel it land. His savings account had enough, which meant he could pay this without a credit card, without interest, without going backward. 3 years ago, this bill would have destroyed him, not just financially, emotionally. It would have been a crisis, a spiral, a reason to give up on the whole project. He would have put it on the card, told himself he'd pay it off in 2 months, and then quietly watched it sit there for 8. Instead, he transferred the money. He authorized the repair. He felt a very specific, very quiet thing in that cold parking lot. Not happiness. Something steadier than happiness. He rebuilt the fund over the next 4 months. He didn't miss a single contribution. At 34, something happened that nobody talks about when they describe what building wealth actually feels like. It had nothing to do with his account balance, nothing to do with his portfolio, nothing to do with money at all, really. First, the market dropped 18% over 4 months. He watched real money evaporate in real time. He checked the account every day for 2 weeks. Then he forced himself to stop. He kept contributing. He bought more shares at lower prices without fully believing he should. He did not sell. By December, he was back where he started. Like the drop never happened. But here's what happened in between. The thing nobody talks about. He was standing in a Home Goods on a Saturday in October. He needed a coffee maker. The one he'd had for 6 years finally gave out. He was holding 2 boxes. One cost $39. The other cost $119. 5 years ago, he would have grabbed the cheaper one without thinking. But he stood there doing a different kind of math. He used this thing every single morning, twice on weekends. That's roughly 400 uses a year. Over 5 years, 2,000 uses. The $119 one had a thermal carafe, no hot plate, a 5-year warranty. The difference in cost per use between the two was 4 cents. He put the $39 one back. He bought the $119 one. He carried it to his car and sat in that parking lot and realized something quietly significant. He was no longer making decisions in the next 30 days frame. He was thinking in years, not as a discipline, not as something he was forcing, as an instinct that had grown in without him noticing it growing. You can't screenshot an instinct. You can't make a thumbnail out of a Tuesday afternoon in a parking lot. But that shift, invisible, unsexy, completely uninstagrammable, is the actual product of 8 years of compounding. Not the number, the wiring. That is the thing that happens at 34. March of his 35th year, his company announced a restructuring. The email went out on a Thursday afternoon, and by 3 p.m. the Slack channels were quiet in the way that only means one thing. People were in private messages. People were quietly updating their LinkedIn. The word restructuring in corporate language is a specific kind of weather system, and everyone in the building recognized the clouds. He went home and ran the numbers. If he lost this job, his savings bought him roughly 3 months at his current spending level, which he knew down to the dollar because he'd been tracking it for 2 years. His portfolio was there if he needed a deeper layer of protection. He was not safe, but he was not one paycheck from collapse the way he was at 31. The layoffs came 2 weeks later, 11 people. He was not one of them, but 3 of his colleagues were, and watching them carry boxes to their cars on a Tuesday morning, he felt something complicated. Relief that he wasn't among them, guilt that he felt relief, and underneath both, a cold, clear understanding that this would happen again, to him or to someone close to him, and that the only real answer was time measured in months that a number in an account could buy him. He increased his emergency fund target from 3 months to 6. He did not touch his investments to do it. Sometime during his 35th year, his friend Marcus bought a BMW, a 2024 5 Series Black. He financed it over 72 months at 6.9% interest. He didn't tell Tony that. He called it a lease situation and changed the subject. But Tony had done enough math in his life to know what that car actually cost every month. And he knew what Marcus made. And he knew those two numbers in relation to each other told a story Marcus hadn't let himself read yet. Tony was sitting in the passenger seat, feeling the pull of it, the leather, the silence of the ride. The way the door closed with the sound of something engineered to feel expensive, and somewhere inside him, quietly, a voice said, "You've been so disciplined. You've given up so much. Doesn't that entitle you to something?" He noticed that voice. He didn't argue with it. He didn't shame himself for having it. He just noticed it the way you'd notice a weather change, and then he let it pass, because he'd learned something about desire. Desire isn't the enemy. Desire on a schedule is. The question is never, do I want this? The question is, what does this cost me in time? In options, in the future I'm building, a $62,000 car at those terms is over $77,000 total paid for something worth less than half that by the time the payments stop. He got out of Marcus's car and walked to his 2018 Honda Civic, and he felt something that took a minute to name. Not deprivation, not jealousy, clarity. The particular piece of knowing exactly what you're doing and why. His portfolio crossed $50, zero on a Thursday morning in April. He was at his desk, checking the app between meetings the way he'd been doing for years. Not obsessively, habitually. The way you'd glance at a plant you've been watering to see if it's grown. The number read just over $51.
Zero.
He went back to the meeting, he took notes, he ate a sandwich at his desk, but the number stayed with him all day like a low, warm hum. This was the first number that felt structural, not a milestone to be proud of. A foundation that had been poured and had cured and would now hold weight. Everything he built from here would sit on top of this. And this, right here, is why he started at 32 instead of waiting until 42. Foundations take time to cure. And he gave it the time. At 38, something happened that redefined what he understood wealth to actually mean. His mother called on a Sunday evening in October. She sounded careful, the way she sounded when she'd been rehearsing what she was about to say. The roof on her house had been leaking for months. She'd ignored it as long as she could. A contractor came out last week. The repair was $6,000. She'd been calling around. She didn't know what to do. She was sorry to ask. Tony told her not to be sorry. He told her he'd take care of it. He hung up and sat with the phone in his hand for a while. Not because of the $6,000. That part was straightforward. He transferred it the following afternoon without touching his investments, without going into debt, without losing sleep. What he sat with was the feeling of what he'd just said. I'll take care of it. Said without hesitation. Said without the background calculation of what he'd have to give up. What card he'd put it on. How many months it would take to pay back. 5 years ago, helping her would have meant debt. It would have meant a quiet shame spiral about being a grown adult who couldn't absorb a family emergency without going backward. It would have meant saying yes out loud while feeling the cost of it somewhere deep in his chest for months. This time, he just helped. That night, Tony understood something he couldn't have read in a book. Wealth isn't a number, it's capacity. It's the option to say yes when it matters to the people who matter, without it costing you your stability. It's not about what's in the account. It's about what you're able to do because of what's in the account. That's the thing the finance industry almost never says out loud. He slept fine that night. At 39, his portfolio generated more than $9,000 in a single year from growth alone. Not from his contributions. From capital doing what capital does when you leave it alone long enough. He was now making money in his sleep. On weekends. On the days he was sick. On the days he forgot to check the account entirely. The machine ran whether he was watching it or not. He built it contribution by contribution, year by year, through a transmission failure and a layoff scare and a market drop and a Sunday phone call that once would have wrecked him, and now it ran. By 39, he had no credit card debt. His student loans were gone, paid off in a single transfer that felt both triumphant and oddly quiet, the way most real victories do. He had a diversified portfolio, a maxed Roth IRA, a small brokerage account, and here's the part nobody posts about. Tony felt lonely in a specific, hard-to-explain way. The people closest to him, people he loved, people he'd known for 15 years, were largely not doing this. Some were in genuine financial pain that broke his heart to watch up close. Some made more than him and spent all of it in a way that seemed fine until suddenly it wouldn't be. Some had quietly made peace with a retirement built entirely on hope and social security math that didn't quite add up. He tried talking about it. Gently. Twice. It went nowhere. People don't change their relationship with money because someone mentioned index funds over dinner. They change it in the dark, alone, when the number finally gets too uncomfortable to look away from. Like Tony did. You can't manufacture that moment for someone else, and once you understand that, you stop trying to. He split the bill evenly even when he ordered less. He didn't perform discipline as a personality. He didn't need them to understand. There's a difference between building wealth and performing discipline. Performing discipline needs an audience. Building wealth doesn't. Tony had stopped needing the audience somewhere around 34, without noticing exactly when. He felt the gap the way you feel a draft from a window you can't quite locate. But he kept carrying it, because this is the part of wealth building that looks like nothing from the outside. No milestone, no moment. Just a person sitting at dinner with people he loved. carrying something private, choosing to keep carrying it anyway. He woke up on his 40th birthday, and before he did anything else, before coffee, before his phone, he lay there in the dark and thought about the kitchen table, the warped countertop, the radiator, the $214, the spreadsheet he almost didn't open. Then he checked the number. Just over $200,000. Not a millionaire. Not financially free in the way the internet defines it. But 40 years old with $200,000 in real working liquid wealth. Built from nothing. Built from a deficit. Built from one honest night when he finally refused to look away. The median American at 40 has a net worth of around $35,000. Tony had nearly 6 times that. Not because he inherited anything. Not because he got lucky, though luck played a quiet supporting role, and he knew it. Because he started. Because he automated the behavior before the motivation arrived. Because he paid cash for a transmission in a cold parking lot and rebuilt the fund before summer. Because he transferred $6,000 to his mother without hesitation and slept fine that night. Because he stayed in the market when his nervous system was screaming at him not to. And somewhere along the way, he realized something unexpected. 8 years ago, he thought wealth would feel like a number. It didn't. It felt like paying for a transmission without panic. It felt like surviving a layoff announcement without fear. It felt like telling his mother, "I'll take care of it," and meaning it. Most of all, it felt like waking up one morning and realizing the future was no longer something happening to him. It was something he had started building. If you're sitting somewhere right now with your own number, the one you haven't looked at directly in a while, this channel is for people who decide to open the spreadsheet anyway. Subscribe if that's you. That's who we're building this for.